quite a leap of faith, is that? He's putting that in there, you know, 'cause potentially that would have hugely limited the audience, potentially.
I think it kind of, it would have done, you know, and I really worried that it would, you know, and that's why I thought it would be a local book rather than kind of national or international, and I just thought, well, you know, I'm not really going to bother about that. This is the book I want to write, and I didn't expect it to be commercially successful, so I didn't have that expectation of it, therefore I didn't have that kind of worry, you know. I think what happened is it kind of worked as a, if you look at the way that fiction is now, it's all most of it's kind of genre, it's all kind of, it's all organised. If you go into a bookstore, if you go onto Amazon, it's all organised in certain kinds of slots, you know, it's like kind of thriller, science fiction, crime, romance, etc. And there's also a kind of, with the growth of the creative writing programmes, there's also a very formulaic way of writing stuff now. And I think that people, particularly kind of people in, you know, from different cultures like, you know, Australia, America and all that, they seem to vibe on the idea of trying to get, you know, of finding it a bit harder, because we're kind of spoon-fed culture now in this era. You know, things are pretty much dumbed down, and it's too easy for us to actually get, you know. And it's and we're very unsatisfied in a lot of ways by the culture that we do consume, you know. And people are starting to look again. I think they're getting bored with being spoon-fed stuff, and they're starting to look for stuff a little bit more difficult, a little bit more kind of inaccessible in a way. And I think that I was very lucky to kind of to tap into that, you know, and I was able to kind of get a profile at that level too.
Do you still feel like you plug some kind of gap in literature with the sort of stuff that you write?
Not really. I mean, I don't really feel sort of conscious of having any kind of place in the whole thing. And I think it's one of the interesting things that's that I kind of I still find is that which is good in a way for me, because I think it's been very difficult for literature in Britain to try and assimilate what I do. You know, it's very, they can't really, you know, they can't really think, they don't really see it as classic English literature. They don't really see it as genre. They don't really quite know what it is, basically, still. And I think that's a very good place to be.
Yeah. Do you like being in that place, or would you prefer to be regarded as a classic writer?
No. I mean, I like being in a place where you can't be categorised in a way. I think that's really, it's kind of it's nice to be in a very kind of niche of one in a way.
Yeah. Because you know, I'd argue that actually you are a classic writer. And I know you can't really answer that. Well, no, actually, no, you can answer it. Go on. But you are. I mean, there isn't what you did. There was nobody else doing anything like that.
Well, I mean, there's a very kind of weird kind of sensibility that's evolved in English fiction, and it's basically to do with it's to do with class rather than anything else. I mean, if you look at kind of what Shakespeare was and who Shakespeare was, and the kind of stuff that Shakespeare wrote, the issues that he dealt with, the very kind of violent sort of and crazy and out there kind of storytelling that Shakespeare did. I mean, that's the kind, you know, and that's the basis of English literature. But English literature has kind of moved away from that. It's kind of sanitized Shakespeare into this kind of very kind of sort of kind of grandiose and kind of grandiloquent and kind of very Ponzi kind of way of looking at sort of art and looking at the world.
Are you comparing yourself to Shakespeare then?
I don't think he's in the same league as me.
What's your favourite airport read?
I tend to write a lot on planes. So I get the laptop out. So I'm not a big kind of airport reader. Beach reader. I mean, a beach read for me is a kind of a really classically good thriller writer like Stephen King. You can keep the pages turning, you know, and it makes you think a little bit about things, but not to the extent where you kind of have to dash for the thesaurus and all that.
What music do you listen to? I'm not sure really.
Well, I mean, music to me is very important in developing the characters in my books. Like, you know, so I kind of I have that when I write my characters, I have this kind of matrix, which I've kind of probably bored everybody about this for years, but it's like kind of where they stay, who they lay, and what they play. So it's basically kind of where they live and where they were brought up. You know, their sex life in particular, but also their social life and social networks, and the music that they listen to. And I make up a playlist for each character, and I find that I like to get that kind of thing about a character where you can actually feel like you're in the room with them, and you can feel them kind of breathing, you know, their breath on your neck and all that. And the way I do that, I think is through music, is through that other kind of that kind of other thing, you know. So it's like if I'm writing Begbie, for example, I just get a pile of Slade and Rod Stewart, you know, and play it as loud as I can and immerse myself in it, and you know. So it's like you know, and if I was doing Sick Boy, I would kind of get lots of Marvin Gaye and sort of Smokey Robinson and all that kind of stuff, you know. So you just do these kind, you just build up these kind of sort of lists for each playlist for each character.
But those characters aside, what moves you? What do you like listening to?
I mean, I kind of I'm a kind of I do what most people do now. I mean, I go digital and I just listen to anything, and I just kind of, you know, I'm very random about it. But when I find something that I really like, I focus on that, and then I just start to go analog on that, and sort of, and kind of get a hold of that stuff.
What are your top tips this year
then? Well, I think the Young Fathers album, not just because they're from Edinburgh, but that's one of the best albums I've heard in a long time. And I mean, I still go out and listen to a lot of local Chicago bands. Oh, right. So yeah, I mean, I think one of the nice things again that's happened is that people are playing music now because there's no money in recording it, so they're going back out and they're playing it. You can actually see bands again without, you know, the kind of relatively unknown bands, you know, in every city in the world now, which is fantastic. You know, so it's almost like kind of culture, which was kind of raised sort of by the internet and globalization, is actually coming back locally again. You know, the sort of green shoots of it are coming back.
Because the music played a really big part, didn't it, in the film, and almost, in some ways defined it. Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, I couldn't, to be quite frank about it, I mean, I couldn't see I mean, I was into the idea of having, you know, the sort of, the kind of housey music stuff, like kind of electronic music stuff, like Underworld and Left Field, to score it, and I was into the, obviously into the kind of, you know, the more stuff that was contemporary to the book, like, you know, Iggy and Lou Reed and Bowie and all that. It was Danny that wanted to do the Britpop stuff, and I couldn't really see that kind of working in it, to be honest, but it did. You know, it kind of it worked spectacularly, and it gave it that kind of you know, that kind of modern feel too. How difficult in making those films, and so that transition from what you create in your head and get down on the paper, how difficult is it for you to let go of that stuff that you've envisaged?
I think that, you know, you've got to respect that a film's a different medium from a book. It's it's a different language of storytelling, and you have to kind of you can't see yourself as a curator of the book. You know, you have to let go of the book. And you always have to remember that the book's going to be there. You know, nobody's fucking with the book. They're just creating something different and additional to it. So you have to kind of, and the transformation is the exciting part of it for me. So you have to be able to let go, I think.
What's been your favourite transformation from book to film?
Well, I think that, you know, the transformations, I mean, they're all really interesting. They're all good in their own way, and you know, there's been some kind of. I mean, I think obviously Trainspotting was a great movie. I think Filth was a fantastic movie and a fantastic kind of virtuoso performance by McAvoy, and I think that was in some ways in some ways I'd probably say that's my favourite, because it had to step out from the shadow of Trainspotting, and it's very difficult to do that. But and that was just a great film to work on. You know, I was working with so many fantastic people, but none of them were a bad experience. You know, the only kind of mortifying experience I've ever had with filmmaking was when we did the Ecstasy movie. That it was a really good script and a really good cast. We were all geared to shoot, and we lost half the money. So Rob Hayden, the director, had to shoot the movie in Canada and with Canadian actors. And we had the premiere in Glasgow, and I think it was like when they had the guy who was on the customs. Suddenly, you know, and people outside of Scotland wouldn't really get up, but we didn't really sort of notice the difference that much. But about 3 or 4 people had this conversation, and they all sounded like groundskeeper Willie from The Simpsons, like. So it was Canadians. You know, we had to have the Canadians, some of the Canadians, and some of them were very good, but the whole cinema in Glasgow just started pissing themselves as one. You know, and I thought, this movie might not last its intended 7-week multiplex run, you know. So we hung in there for about 2 or 3 weeks, I think, and then we were kind of off.
Oh, do you want to make a film about the Donnellys, man?
Is this Dean kind of?
Dean,
we got the monkey standing in front of the organ grinder there, like. You know?
The accent.
I saw you on telly fairly recently, bigging up the Yes vote. Are Scotland, are they going to go independent? Do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of pretty much inevitable, kind of, you know, at some point. Not because, I think basically because, you know, it's like, I think the whole of the UK is kind of over, basically, as a sort of, as a political entity. I mean, I see it as, you know, it was very much about industry and empire, and then it was about, you know, the esprit de corps from 2 world wars, and the kind of the welfare state and all that, you know, and all these things have gone, and there's nothing really holding it together now, you know. So I see it being very much in kind of secular decline. And I think what's going on in Scotland is just one of the responses, you know, across these islands to, you know, a kind of an ongoing kind of phenomenon, you know, sort of an ongoing kind of you know, phenomenon of deindustrialization, which has kind of completely changed the country. You know, it's like we've always had a very we've always had a unitary system of government where everything's based around London and the southeast, so all the resources get sucked in there. And to some extent, it didn't really matter after the post-war because all the industry was based up here, basically. But now there's no industry. You've got this kind of chronic kind of economic and political imbalance, and it's not really going to right itself. So I think you're going to see more. You're going to see more dissent with that kind of with that system, and it is. I mean, the UK. When you look at the UK was set up basically as a sort of. It's very much a rich man's club, and you know, Westminster's kind of. You look at the whole history of the UK. I mean, we've basically had we had a post-war boom, and we've had 1 or 2 minor booms since then. But it's all been fucking world wars and depressions and globalizations and kind of you know, and sort of you know, recessions and all that. You know, so it's always been about kind of looking after the very, very wealthier elements in our society. And now it's got so chronic that I just don't think it can be sustained anymore.